Hey, thanks for listening to the Big Sci-Fi Podcast. This is our in-between season shorts, shorter episodes where we invited some of our biggest fans to talk about their favorite areas of fandom. Don't miss a single episode here on the Big Sci-Fi Podcast. This podcast is a part of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network. Hey everyone, welcome to the Big Sci-Fi Podcast in-between season content. Believe it or not, we recently wrapped up season 6 and are doing something entirely new this time. Behave over there, Steve. But before we get into that, please like, share, subscribe to our YouTube channel and the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. If that platform lets you leave reviews, please do so, or comment either on YouTube or on Spotify. Yes, Spotify has a speech. It has a speecher, whatever that is. It has a feature that allows you to comment on podcasts right on their platform. Doing these things helps us get discovered by other fans just like you. And fans like the people who we'll be chatting with in our in-between season content this time around. First up is a fan of the show, but not just any old fan, ladies and gentlemen. She is, I know this for certain, one of the original first fans of the Big Sci-Fi Podcast. And how do I know that, you might ask? Hey. Well, it's my sister-in-law, one of my favorite sister-in-laws, I like to say, because I don't know if I'm allowed to say favorite, technically, especially in a public venue like this. But Miriam Ballinger, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm so excited to be here.
We are so excited to have you, sis.
Yes.
And I just want everybody to know, Miriam is my sister-in-law, but in real life, I refer to her just as my sister. So she's a pretty good sister-in-law.
All right.
Excited to have you on the show, Miriam. I know that you and your whole family are sci-fi fans, and you're eclectic in your taste. You watch a lot, and you're knowledgeable of a lot. And so we're just going to ask Miriam a few questions about her so that our listeners can learn about her a little bit. And so I'll let you guys, Steve and Adina, why don't you guys start? Cris is, we'll jump in here in a minute if he gets in, but right now it's just Adina, Steve, and myself with Miriam.
Well, ladies first.
Sure. I mean, the first place to start really is, Miriam, what are your top fandoms? There's like a whole world of science fiction. So what are your top 3 favorites?
My top 3 favorites from childhood are, in no particular order, Star Trek, the original series, Space 1999,
really?
And the original Battlestar Galactica.
With Lauren Grin?
Yes.
Lauren? Oh, yes. Wow.
In fact, my father has a nickname for me that he actually got from Battlestar Galactica, and I can't believe I'm actually going to say this out loud. It's Munchie.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
So
Brian, you're not allowed to call me Munchie.
I won't. I will. I would never. I am surprised the Space 1999 thing. I don't think I knew that. Battlestar Galactica, I might have guessed, but the Space 1999, that's pretty cool.
Yes. My dad is a huge sci-fi fan, and he, of course, indoctrinated my sister and I. My mom just kind of tagged along, but really, he was the driving force of our sci-fi experience.
Thanp you for answering my question without me asking it, because I was going to ask that. Where did you first start? No.
It's okay.
Wait a minute. Was it a mind meld here? I don't know.
That's not the way it works. You got to touch the fingers on the head and everything.
Only in Star Trek. There's there's other ways to do it.
Thank you, Adina.
Well, what's another question you would like to ask Steve?
Well, I guess I'd like to know, is there any, well, you mentioned a couple different genres, but is there the one particular movie that really says, this is what I love about science fiction? Or even TV series, if you'd like.
Wow.
That's a really good question. Yeah.
It's a hard question.
And it's totally none of the 3 I've mentioned. I think my favorite sci-fi movie would have to be E.T.
Okay.
Wow. All right.
Interesting.
I will tell you that my goddaughter, when she was 3, saw that movie. And that made her a big fan of movies and science fiction, that she was so taken by E.T. And it touches a lot of people in a very, very special way. Yes, that's a great choice.
Confession time.
Uh-oh.
Are you going to say you've never seen? Oh my gosh!
I've never seen E.T.
I have it. We'll come over. We'll binge.
Okay.
Please do.
Sounds like a plan.
Elliot.
Maybe we'll record a special side podcast episode too with us discussing E.T.
Oh,
definitely.
My goodness.
You know, I keep thinking you're my age, and then when you say things like that, that's when I remember you're actually like 5 years younger than me. Because I was probably 5 or 6 when I saw it in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, you know though why I haven't seen it, and I have been influenced by my father, just like Miriam.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the sci-fi that I grew up loving was sci-fi that he liked, and he just didn't care for E.T. And so we never saw it. We never rented it. And in the process of growing up, it just has never been, I've of course been way aware of it. It's on my radar, of course. I just have never sought it out. So
with Battlestar Galactica, you know, you said the original. Did you wind up ever watching the redone?
I started watching it, but I'll be real, I didn't care for it as much. It was darker, it was scarier, it was sexier, and it kind of, it felt like to me sort of a betrayal to the original.
Interesting.
Yes. Yeah. Miriam's gotten me to say interesting first like 5 times already, guys. I should come up with fascinating.
Thank you. I was going to just say the same thing, but it is fascinating, Jim.
Yeah.
Yes.
I agree with you, Miriam, because I started watching, I guess it was the miniseries version. Like I didn't even know there was like a miniseries and then a separate series, but with the same people in it. Am I right about that? So the one I saw was like, it was.
I remember that. Yes.
Yeah. I just was like, man, they're just threw all kinds of stuff in it. I was like, just get to the good stuff, you know? Right. So I watched about 30 minutes and I just wasn't quite hooked enough to keep going.
Exactly. And I was a huge Starbuck and Apollo fan. So seeing, not that Katie Sackhoff wasn't a great, you know, character.
I love Katie Sackhoff. Yeah.
I love Katie Sackhoff too. But you know, I was in love with Apollo and Starbuck as a kid, you know, and they were wholesome and you were okay to be, you know, I felt like it was a more wholesome show, but it was a different time. So
if they drove a red Torino, you'd be watching Starsky and Hutch, the way the two of them worked, where you're right along in the show, you know?
Or the Duke boys.
Yes, exactly. We are predating ourselves. Oh boy.
I know, right?
What would you say? Can you figure, is this something, this might be a question you might need to think about, but is there a favorite quote from a movie or a series that resonates with you? Or is it more just general?
Well, I'll tell you, and then I'll tell you a funny story.
Cool.
You know, Space, The Final Frontier. That's one that you remember. And when we all had to be washing our hands for COVID, that whole little spiel was long enough to fulfill the time you needed to wash your hands.
Nice.
So I'm standing in the bathroom, washing my hands, going, Space, The Final Frontier.
Okay,
we have now officially replaced Happy Birthday.
Well, for me, it's the alphabet. I'm still singing the alphabet. Why haven't I thought of Space, The Final Frontier yet?
I remember that I didn't share that with you.
I remember that went around several, you know, during COVID times that went around. There's like a meme or something in several of the Star Trek groups. So yeah.
That's so funny. That's so funny.
Okay. And Miriam, you get to meet Cris. Cris is able to drop into this. Miriam.
Hey.
Hello, Cris.
Hello. How are you?
Good. I hear you have an exciting new job.
Yeah, new job downtown Toronto. So now it's a very long commute. You got to take the subway, then a go bus. But yeah, it's going well. I'm glad to meet you and to be here.
Well, I'm glad you made it back in time.
So, Cris, what you missed was that Miriam's top fandoms are Trek, of course.
The original series.
Trek. Yes.
Okay, excellent.
Space 1999.
I need to actually watch that. Give that a try.
Yeah, and the original Battlestar Galactica.
Very cool.
The original Battlestar Galactica.
Like the original, yeah. I need to actually watch both.
And I've got another question. Do we have time for another question?
I think we have time for one, maybe two more questions.
Okay, cool. Is there a particular piece of music or soundtrack from science fiction that gives you all the feels?
I knew you were going to ask the music
I have
question.
to ask the music.
Anything by John Williams.
Okay.
All right.
That's good answer.
Well,
like on Family Feud. Good answer. Good answer. Good answer. Yeah.
But we won't ask you which one of his pieces because there's way too many to work with.
Mm-hmm.
We have Blossom Music Center up near us, and they do a tribute to John Williams in the summer, and we go and we see it. So it's pretty awesome.
It's the one thing about the Star Wars soundtrack for the first film, New Hope. It is so well done. That's probably, to me, I think that is his most iconic piece of music.
For sure.
Really,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I have to say, for me, it's like I like New Hope for the music, but Empire is like for me where the music just hits, especially the asteroid chase scene.
Oh yeah,
or escape, whatever you want to call it. It's just so perfect.
Yeah,
so perfect.
So the last question I want to ask is because Miriam, you mentioned your dad getting you into science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you suggest to bring other people into science fiction? Where would you suggest they start? They had to start somewhere.
I'm going to tell everybody to start with a book because I find that there are very few books that I found that are eclipsed by their movies. Mm-hmm. I've read Dune. I've read a lot of Dune. I've read a lot of sci-fi. I don't do horror or like scary sci-fi. That's my sister's genre. But start with a book because there's just so much out there that everybody can find something that they're going to like.
I like that answer. That's good.
Very good. Very good.
That's cool. I like that because I don't feel like science fiction books get the same love that the TV shows or movies do. So that's cool to hear.
Not always.
And
great.
Miriam, it might be interesting. Miriam is a serious bookie. So how many books a year would you say you read?
I usually try to read at least between 100 and 150.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
That's amazing.
My daughter's blowing me out of the water this year. She's just way ahead of me. I started the year off really slow. There was a lot going on. We had a new baby in the household. So
wow.
I congratulate you.
Thank you.
Cool.
If I can tell one more story, just because we didn't mention the collectibles, but my dad is a huge Star Trek fan. Huge, just huge. So when Hallmark started putting out Star Trek ships, I started buying them for my dad.
Okay.
And we got to the point where he couldn't keep them on the tree because they dimmed the lights.
Oh my.
And the year we discovered that, I'm like, Dad, you need to shore up your warp core just to keep it going. But we ended up, my husband and I built him a frame so he could display them and they weren't drawing all the power from the lights on the tree.
Nice.
That way you can enjoy it year round then.
Absolutely. And I think the favorite thing the kids have is the little communicator. They just love that little button. It says Spock to Enterprise. Spock to Enterprise.
I want to give a shout out to Miriam, her husband Wade, their daughter Joey. They are some of the, I'm telling you guys, they have to be in the first 10 people that started listening to our podcast. And then also to her father, Richard, her sister, Patty. But to Richard for being such a big Star Trek fan. I didn't realize that. So next time I see him, we're going to talk some Trek. So
the first VHS tape we ever got was the original Star Trek movie.
I believe it.
Motion picture.
Motion picture. Yep.
Awesome.
My mom bought it for him, and we won't discuss the price back then.
Yeah, right. Well, speaking of prices, this podcast is free, don't you know? So we would love to have you write a review and tell us where you're listening from. And make sure you stay tuned for more in-between season content. You never know who's going to show up on our Zoom call here at the in-between season content. Get ready for season 7, guys, because it's coming to you quick. It's going to be a fantastic season 7. A lot of new things coming your way. Stay tuned for the next episode of the Big Sci-Fi Podcast.